What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and we have a lot of Dallas Cowboys news to get to for today. It is Wednesday, August 25th, 2021. A lot to get to. Not going to waste your time. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's all do this. Let's take a deep breath. Let's power through. All right, so let's kind of reset where things were at as Tuesday night ended. When Hard Knocks happened, we did have our Hard Knocks reaction show, recap show here on the channel. Make sure you go back, you watch that. Make sure you also please subscribe to the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. But Tuesday was an important day in the NFL because every team had to trim their rosters from 85 to 80 players. The Dallas Cowboys were in a bit of a unique situation because as of Tuesday, they had 4 players on the reserve COVID-19 list. Those players do not count against the total numerical value of an NFL roster. So the Dallas Cowboys technically only had to move on from one player. That wound up being kicker Lareem Harulahula, who the Cowboys signed last week after they waived Hunter Nicewander with the injured designation. He reverted back to the team's injured reserve, obviously. So the Cowboys ended Tuesday, began Wednesday with 80 players on their roster. Now, we'll try to keep this chronological for you because it's been a huge sequence of news. So first of all, on Tuesday, the Dallas Cowboys, and this was really predictable because of the fact that they moved on from Lareem, activated kicker Greg Zuerlein from the physically unable to perform list. So now Greg Zuerlein back on the Dallas Cowboys roster, clearly on track to play week 1. Like John Fossil has said he was going to be this entire time. He's probably going to kick on Sunday against the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Cowboys' final preseason game. This is very good news. Now, the first place my brain always goes to is, okay, well, the Cowboys added a player. They were already at the maximum in terms of 80. So what goes up must come down. How are the Cowboys going to make room for him? Who's going to be the player that the Cowboys move on from to ultimately make the place that they need for Greg Zuerlein? Well, Mike McCarthy took to the podium on Wednesday, and when he did, he revealed that the Dallas Cowboys have added 2 more players to the reserve COVID-19 list. Now, on Tuesday, it's been a week, so losing track of days. On Tuesday, the Dallas Cowboys added both Malik Hooker and Israel Mukuamu to the reserve COVID-19 list. Damontae KZ was held out of the early portion of practice on Tuesday out of an abundance of caution. He is the first player who the Dallas Cowboys did add to the reserve COVID-19 list on Wednesday. That's 1 of 2. That's 3 safeties, by the way, with Hooker, Mukuamu, and now KZ. The other player is left guard Connor Williams, the second offensive player because CeeDee Lamb is on the list, obviously. So that brings in total the Dallas Cowboys' number of players on the reserve COVID-19 list at the time of this recording, at least, to 6. Carlos Watkins, along with defensive coordinator Dan Quinn, left AT&T Stadium shortly before last Saturday's game against the Houston Texans out of an abundance of caution. So Carlos Watkins, CeeDee Lamb, Malik Hooker, Israel Mukuamu, Damontae KZ, and Connor Williams. That's your 6 players. So when you think about this, the Cowboys already, because of Tuesday's events, had 80 players. They added Greg Zuerlein. That's 81. Then they put KZ and Connor Williams on the list themselves. That takes them back down to 79. So they are technically below the threshold that they ultimately needed to be at when it comes to an 80-man roster because of the NFL's current rules. Every team in the NFL will have to get down to 53 players by next Tuesday. We will have a live roster reaction show available for you as cuts are pouring in. We will start that at 2 p.m. Central Time on Monday if you want to hang out with us here on the channel. We will have some guests and fun things that we do as well. Okay, so 79 players. But to kind of jump ahead, I know I said we're going to keep things chronological, but this is an important piece. Israel Mukuamu is seemingly back. He was part of the Cowboys practice on Wednesday, which is great to see. So you would imagine that he's coming off of the reserve COVID-19 list soon. So that would put the Cowboys back at 80, which is the maximum number of players that they are allowed to have. Now, Israel Mukuamu is the first safety of the players that are part of the reserve COVID-19 list group that is now back with the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think that the other ones are really going to play a whole much against the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday. And I also don't think that Israel Mukuamu needs to earn his roster spot. He's on my 53-man roster. I imagine he's on yours. Speaking of, we are going to have a 53-man roster projection video that we will drop on Sunday evening after the 4th preseason game for the Cowboys. So be on the lookout for that as well. But Israel Mukuamu seemingly on track to be able and eligible to play on Sunday against the Jaguars. We will keep you updated as that happens. But that is not the only bit of news to concern the secondary, the safety position specifically, because while all these other players are part of the reserve COVID-19 list, we also found out, or rather confirmed, that Donovan Wilson, the other starting safety for the Cowboys, has a groin injury that he suffered on Tuesday. So he was not part of Wednesday's activities. Neither was Trayvon Diggs, who was the subject or one of the more intimate subjects of Tuesday night's episode of Hard Knocks, who has a non-COVID illness. So the Cowboys really down in terms of players and bodies in their secondary. So we'll see how that ultimately shakes out. But again, remember, we told you that the Cowboys were at 79 players. When you factor in everything, they were at 80 on Tuesday. They added Zuerlein to get to 81. They dropped the 2, but they will likely be back at 80 if Israel Mukuamu comes off of the COVID list. But they will be back at 79 soon enough. Why will the Cowboys be back at 79? Well, because on Wednesday as well, it was announced that Rico Dowdle, Cowboys running back, who was on my 53-man roster, is now headed to injured reserve with a hip injury, according to the Dallas Morning News. Now, how does this work? Because this is interesting, and there is a little bit of tinfoil hat conspiracy theory going on here. If a player is placed on injured reserve at this time of the year, so during the preseason, they are not eligible to return from injured reserve during the regular season. So if you put a player on injured reserve now, their season is done. You will not see them until the season is over. So in this case, 2022. We saw the Cowboys at last week's roster cut down, put Reggie Robinson on injured reserve and put Shewo Olanilu on injured reserve. That was 2. We mentioned Hunter Nicewander, who the Cowboys applied the waived injured designation to, which means that if a player passes through waivers unclaimed by any other NFL team, he reverts to the waiving team's injured reserve. So the Cowboys waived Hunter Nicewander. Nobody claimed him. He reverted to the Cowboys injured reserve. So he is there too. But the player who was first given that designation was linebacker Anthony Hines. So he passed waivers too last week. We talked about this already. He is also on injured reserve. So that's 4 players. And now Rico Dowdle makes 5. Again, this was reported to be a hip injury. Jaquan Hardy was also profiled on Tuesday night's episode of Hard Knocks. Maybe this boosts his opportunity to make the 53-man roster. I don't know. I think that the Cowboys have only carried 2 running backs before. We know that this is going to be the Zeke show and the Tony Pollard show to a hopefully larger degree than it's been before. But there's really not going to be a lot of room for another running back to take snaps. Obviously need somebody on special teams. Maybe that's Jaquan Hardy. Maybe that third back is Nick Ralston, the fullback on the roster. But either way, it does kind of seem on the surface that the Cowboys are stashing Rico Dowdle for the future and that they want him as part of it, but that they don't necessarily have a roster spot for him in the here and now. That is something that happens in the NFL. Teams are creative. Teams exploit these loopholes. So we will not see Rico Dowdle this year, but hopefully we do see him in the future. But that does bring the Cowboys back now, again, at the time of this recording, which is an important phrase to say today of all days because there's been so much news, at 79 players on their roster. However, one last qualifier on that, the other players on the COVID list, and let's put that back up here for you, Carlos Watkins, CeeDee Lamb, Malik Hooker, DeMonte KZ, and Connor Williams. We're assuming that Israel Mukuamu is on his way back. When those players are brought back to the active roster, the Cowboys, like we talk about all the time, what goes up must come down. They have to stay under, or rather at 80 players or below. So if they go past that threshold, they have to make a corresponding move. So right now the Cowboys are good, but that's where things stand with all of the roster shuffling. Oh, by the way, last subject on this, ESPN's Todd Archer did report or did tweet, or kind of tweeted a sort of interesting thought. The only 2 players, now that Greg Zuerlein has been brought back off of the PUP list, that are left on it are Tristan Hill and Chauncey Golston, Cowboys draft pick this year. And so Todd Archer of ESPN noted that they are candidates to likely begin the season on injured reserve. Now, that's different than these players who are being placed on injured reserve now. The Cowboys, if they do want to put Tristan Hill and Chauncey Golston on injured reserve when the season begins, they have to initially carry them on their 53-man roster. So next Tuesday, when we have our live reaction show, it's very likely that Tristan Hill and Chauncey Golston are on the 53-man roster. But while teams will refer to that as their final 53-man roster, that will experience a lot of change in the following 48 hours or so, because the Cowboys and a lot of other teams will put players on injured reserve. Now, if this does ultimately wind up happening with Tristan Hill and or Chauncey Golston, they will have to be on injured reserve for the first 6 weeks of the regular season, and that will open up 2 roster spots at that time for the Cowboys to bring back other players potentially who they did cut or waive or move on from, or to potentially sign other players who were cut away by other NFL teams or to add players by trades, whatever the case may be. You get the picture. But every player has come off of the pup, or a lot of players have come off recently. Amari Cooper, DeMarcus Lawrence, now Greg Zuerlein. It does seem like Tristan Hill and Chauncey Golston are going to be there just to be put on it to begin the regular season. But speaking of the regular season, it's 15 days away. Cowboys taking on the Buccaneers, and a lot of the national media has been concerned about the status of Dak Prescott. Depending on what you read, where you read, all panic is around the Cowboys, and nobody knows that Dak Prescott's ever going to be the same. Well, it was reported, or rather it was announced by Mike McCarthy during his press conference on Wednesday that he was going to participate in 7-on-7 drills, some competitive throwing, which was going to be a positive step for him, a huge step for him. And we were really excited about this. But then the practice reports came out, and Dak Prescott actually participated in 11-on-11 team drills. I mean, this is a hugely positive sign for Dak Prescott, a huge step in the right direction. I don't even want to say that because that implies that a step was needed. I mean, I think we all believed that Dak Prescott was fine. The Cowboys were just being cautious, etc., blah, blah, blah. I mean, this is very, very, very good. This is justification that Dak Prescott is well on track to be ready for week 1 against the Buccaneers. If you want to say you don't believe he's 100%, fine. But either way, the sky is not falling. Dak Prescott is fine. Everything's good. And yeah, that was a lot of stuff. We will keep you updated on everything that continues to happen with the Dallas Cowboys, of course, at bloggingtheboys.com. Here on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel, make sure you do subscribe. We recently passed 12,000 subscribers. We're excited to see what the season has in store for us. Excited to experience it with all of you. Make sure you also subscribe to the Blogging the Boys podcast network. We have a podcast that drops every single day. We have multiple episodes that drop every single day, actually, because we know that news is always happening. It's football season. This is the team that we all love. This is the thing that we have in common, and we love to share and experience it with you. So we are available on all major podcast platforms. If you can, subscribe, leave a rating, write a review. Those things help us out a lot. My name is RJ Ochoa. You know me, of course, from Blogging the Boys. If you want to hit me up on Twitter or Instagram, you have a question, comment, concern, my DMs are open. I am at RJ Ochoa. If email is more your speed, maybe 280 characters is not enough, you can always shoot me one over at rj.ochoa@sbnation.com. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. It was a busy day. It's been a weird week for the Cowboys, but we're moving along. One last preseason game before it all starts to count for real. Thanks for joining us, everybody. See you next time.